Hello and welcome to, well, not Grand Line Review. And there's a reason for that, and I'll tell you why in a bit, but we are here to talk about episode 1015 of the One Piece anime. Because it is phenomenal, and look, if you haven't seen it, just go do it. Watch it now. But before we begin, because I know that you people are going to ask, this video isn't on Grand Line Review because one, I don't have time to edit a proper Grand Line Review video. They're quite time intensive these days. And two, because there's a manga chapter review coming out, well, I would say very soon. And if I post two videos too close to one another, then they just end up cannibalizing each other in terms of views. So there's your backstage insight for this here video. And now let's talk about fictional pirates. So a good half of this episode was actually dedicated to Yamato and Ace, which I wasn't expecting because their part in the manga is quite short. And first up, let's not pretend here. The reason why this consists of half the runtime is because we're not allowed to adapt too much material, or else the manga, or I should say the anime, or else the anime will catch up to the manga in no time. So it is filler, but it is substantive filler. Like the food that fills your belly, it is of substance. Because it's not just stalling for time like the anime used to be, it's actually giving us new information. Very strongly developing that relationship between Yamato and Ace being a key one, which is very welcome, very, very welcome. I am always keen to see more of Ace, even if it is generally a bittersweet experience because of the whole death thing. But I guess that's kind of the point. Because one of, I would say, the many things that this episode did better than the manga was land that impact of Ace's death on Yamato. In fact, I don't know why he's in the straw hat. He really should be in the Ace hat for this. Keep the chopper hat on though. Need to triple hat this. Yeah. Alright, now with that out of the way. This episode landed the impact of Ace's death on Yamato so well, which is something that you can only do if, you take your sweet time to let those characters have positive experiences with one another. So it's actually a great example of a mantra that I try to live by, which is restrictions breed creativity. The anime team are restricted by the amount of material that they're allocated to adapt, and so as a result, very creative solutions must be found. And in this case, that solution was to flesh out that material and give some substance to the audience. Like if you were an anime only watcher, I don't even think the thought would ever cross your mind that most of this material is anime original. And another great part of this was Yamato's confrontation with Daddy Kaido. Something I do feel like I've been really missing with Yamato in the manga is just raw backstory. Like Yamato pops up and says, I want to be the Odin, and also I don't like my dad, and we just kind of go with it. And we get fed a few scraps of flashback here and there, but it's still not enough to satisfy my Yamato craving. So I'm always happy to get more Yamato stuff, and kicking into action with Kaido, even though we don't get to see the fight, well, it's great. But there's a couple of really beautiful sequences in episode 1015, and in particular there's, look, I don't even know quite what to call this. What is it, like a combined flashback? Where the events of Luffy, Ace, and Sabo are playing out alongside Whitebeard, Roger, and Odin, like their spaces intersect and everything. And there's a lot of soft, pastel, and twining colors, which is an aesthetic that you almost never see in One Piece. In fact, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything even remotely similar in the series. But in addition to being beautifully executed, this scene also achieves something that the manga did not, which is to make very, very clear that Luffy's dream goes further than simply becoming the Pirate King. He has a hidden ambition beyond that, and he needs to become the Pirate King in order to further that hidden ambition, or at least he thinks he does. And this episode also made superbly clear that Roger also held that dream. And it does this by quite literally having Roger and Child Luffy yell the beginning of this ambition together, which is then followed by like a very classic anime mind blow effect. You know, the one where like the screen shatters and it all goes psh. But it's tropey, but it's well earned. Because we don't talk about this, I think, anywhere near enough. But Yamato is currently one of the only people in this world who knows Luffy's true dream. This is something that even the other Straw Hats don't know. But also Yamato knows that this was also Roger's dream. It's gotta stop saying also. And other characters who know these two things probably include Shanks and Ray Lee, and there's probably about it. However, I do think my favorite part of the entire episode was the end of that first half, where we have the montage of the Worst Generation members making their way up to the roof. This part, it gave me legitimate chills, which is weird because look, I know it's going to happen, but everything still felt, I don't even know what the right word to describe this is. Epic? And I mean the true sense of the word epic, not the internet sense of epic. You know, the one where you've got this large-scale, high-stakes drama that could potentially decide the fate of the world, that kind of proper epic. And to contrast that, I also really appreciated that bit of comedy with Zoro falling and Law needing to like catch him in a room. It's great because in the manga, I believe you see Marco flinging him up, but by the time Luffy reaches the roof, Zoro's just, he's standing there all cool going, ugh. Like he made his way up to the roof in some sort of really badass manner that Luffy just didn't see. So I find it hilarious hilarious that Zoro was so embarrassed to get up to the roof in such a goofy way, and in front of his fellow respected pirates. But it was when Luffy finally reached the roof that maximum chills were engaged. The atmosphere created for this moment was completely different to what I think I anticipated, particularly the use of the very vivid reds. And I should probably expect that because it's kind of a Megumi Ishitani trademark, but it was insanely effective in presenting the situation in such a dire way. And also, the best part was there was a proper in-world excuse for this really dramatic lighting. There was a wonderful shot where Prometheus kind of, scuttled between Big Mom and Kaido. He positioned himself behind them, and he was actually the source of that dramatic red light, which is probably the best thing that teeny tiny sun has ever done. And it was just so brilliant. I mean, why has nobody ever thought to use the literal sun creature as a key source of light for any One Piece scene? I mean, maybe not any scene, the ones he's in, obviously, but there's lots of those. And yeah, look, bias up front here. As a lighting designer for theater, that's the sort of detail that I tend to appreciate even more than some story details, to be honest. I just really like it when people take the time to consider light sources. Because for the most part, I do feel like the One Piece anime has like a very flat aesthetic and doesn't take advantage of such an incredibly powerful feature that is lighting. Probably the most heartbreaking moment of the episode, though, was when Luffy was approaching Kinemon. This was ridiculously well done. But Luffy had a flashback of speaking to the vassals. We see them all standing there and just bam! We immediately cut to a shot of them all on the floor, injured and potentially dying if you don't know what's coming, but in the exact same positions that they were standing in. And I'm sorry in advance, but this is going to be the most minor thing I think I've ever praised. But what really sells this cut to me is the sound design. For the shot of the vassals all standing ready to fight, there's no music, and in the background all we hear is the sound of a breeze. A breeze interacting with like leaves and grass and the like. But then we immediately cut to the vassals on the ground, and again, no music, but that wind sound is replaced with more of a windy drone. It sounds very heavy and lifeless, and that is directly juxtaposed against the very light and lively winds just before it. And of course, there's also the contrast of the green grass and the red lighting. All really small creative choices, but those small choices add up to such a profound effect. But I have to say, one of the things I was most keen to see animated was the other flashback sequence at the end of chapter 1000. The part where Luffy's about to do the punch on Kaido, and he reminisces about the whole Four Emperors saga so far. And that series of flashbacks give us the emotional punch we need to accompany the physical red rock that Luffy delivers straight into Kaido's face. Which might seem like a weird thing to be curious about, but these are usually examples of moments where the anime actually outshines the manga, particularly because of the power of voice acting and music. Those two features in particular have an ability to portray emotion that written words can't always achieve, but this flashback sequence, it was even better than I was expecting. Knocked my tea. Because Megumi Ishitani did what Megumi Ishitani does best. Read the events on paper, says, cool, this is what needs to happen, but this is why we're not going to do it the same way, we're going to do it better. Because I think as much as we as fans crave, the quote-unquote faithful adaptation, that sort of thing doesn't always translate well into animation. So this was handled in a way that really takes advantage of what that medium is best at. There are lots of quick cuts through moving parts that transition seamlessly into one another. Like one of the first shots is the vassals watching Oden's castle burn, which then transitions into the Straw Hats and Carrots viewing the Kozuki graves, and then that transitions into the Straw Hats staring at the road poneglyph on Zou. And it's hard to describe, like a lot of things apparently, but the way the camera moves and transitions it's just so damn satisfying. It's like being on a literal roller coaster of emotion. And having brought up Carrot, my favorite part of this whole sequence does involve the bunny. 1015, it took a lot of liberties with what material was used to construct various parts of the episode, and a decision was made to include a shot of Carrot right after Pedro's death. Doing the old reaching out in pain. No, come back. Look, I'm not an actor. I can't do it. But that shot then transitions into Toko doing the exact same thing after Yasu was killed. Just to remind you, no, come back. And it's so small, again, such a small decision, but stuff like this is why Megumi Ishitani episodes hit so much harder than your average episode. Because with Carrot, for one, there were no scenes from Whole Cake Island in the original manga flashback, so adding that Carrot part adds a whole new arc's worth of weight to the emotional punch, and tying it in with Wano via Toko was absolute genius. It's also a nice little setup for a certain Pedro reminiscing moment. But the sequence was phenomenal, and it gave us what we really needed to go on and experience Kaido just getting walloped. which is of course the crown jewel of 1015, and I'm not even going to bother to try and describe it because there are no words that can do this action piece justice. And just go and watch it. And look, if you've already seen it, go watch it again. If you've already seen it twice, a third time won't hurt. What I will linger on, however, is the musical choice of this moment, which is an instrumental of course, We Are, the very first One Piece opening. And it's probably the most iconic piece of music in the entire series. I found it interesting because when I read 1000, I pictured a much more dramatic track, like the one that was used when Luffy first stepped outside the door and walked towards the Emperors, you know, the oh, it doesn't sound anything like that. I've got to stop doing that. I am not a music, but it just goes to show that even sometimes I just get One Piece completely wrong. We Are was the perfect track to use because of how it ties back in with episode 1. I mean, this episode is called Straw Hat Luffy and it ends with the famous Pirate King words, much like how episode 1 ended. And using We Are, oh, it smacked me right in the nostalgia balls. In the best way possible, if that is indeed possible. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a huge fan of that kind of thing. I know that some people are, and that's fine. Look, I'm not here to judge you. I am here to judge cartoons. But also because, look, here's the thing that I consistently complain a lot about the fan base missing. One Piece is supposed to make us happy. It is the adventure of wacky Rubber Boy, and it's designed to give us hope and optimism. And so using We Are did exactly that. It made me feel comfortable and safe, like everything was going to be okay, even though our shamble of characters were facing off against the two most powerful beings in this world. And I really love that, and this episode as a whole, because it certainly didn't play out the way I quite pictured it, but it exceeded those expectations. It shows you the power that anime has, because in its best moments, the One Piece anime is better than the manga, and not just by a bit, by a lot. There's just, unfortunately, not a lot of those moments. But 1015 shows what you can do when you grab the holy trinity of production. You take the best source material, you give that to the best visionaries, and you give them also the time and the money they need to bring it to life. And if the rest of One Piece were like this, then it would be almost universally declared the best anime to have ever existed. And I really don't think that's a diluted exaggeration, but it might be. I acknowledge that I'm a little bit biased when it comes to the old One Piece. I think that the greatest praise I can give episode 1015 is that it's one of those episodes that I would not be ashamed to show my friends or family. It's not something that I would be either internally or even externally apologizing for. In regards to pacing, art, or animation, it's just really, really solid and exceptionally well executed television.